The auction hall at Station Terminus. 9 smelled like metal burning and dreams that had come true. The smell of old machines and traders' desperation to make their next credit filled the air. Jake Morgan was standing in the very back corner, leaning against a cold metal wall with his arms crossed over his chest. He had been watching this auction for almost 2 hours, and he was getting tired of seeing junk sell for prices that didn't make sense. Aliens from all over the galaxy were yelling bids and waving their arms in the air around him. Some had tentacles, some had claws, and some had things that Jake couldn't even name. The noise from their universal translators sounded like 1,000 conversations happening at once in a blender. It made Jake's head hurt, but he stayed focused. There was a reason he was here. The auctioneer was a tall, thin thing with too many joints in its arms and eyes that sat on long stalks that moved on their own. It had been droning on in that same boring voice all afternoon, listing item after item of junk that traders thought was worth a lot of money. Lot 47, the auctioneer said in a voice that made it sound like they would rather be anywhere else in the world. Derelict vessel, confirmed to be from the architect civilization. The quantum core doesn't work. Selling as is, only for building materials. Value of scrap. As soon as the auctioneer said those words, the whole hall fell silent. Not the kind of quiet where everyone is holding their breath before a big bid. No, this was the kind of quiet that happens when everyone in the room thinks something is useless. Jake's heart started to beat faster. He pushed off the wall and leaned forward. The auctioneer kept going, clearly not expecting much. 500 credits for the first bid. Do I hear 500? Be quiet. Complete silence. Jake could hear someone in the front row moving around in their seat. He could hear the air recyclers on the station humming. He could hear himself breathe. Then, a Voltron trader in the front row made a clicking sound with his mandibles. The Voltron were big creatures with dark blue armor plates all over their bodies and many arms and insect-like features. This one turned his friend and said something loud enough for half the hall to hear. Architect Tech? The Voltron said, and the translator made his words sound like they were buzzing. Ha! You might as well buy a religious statue and pray to it. It would be just as helpful as that dead Hulk. A few other traders laughed. One of them, a scaly reptile that glowed purple in the light, nodded in agreement. The architects have been gone for 10,000 years. You can't fix their quantum cores. This is something that everyone knows. It is true. Fact about the galaxy. Someone else spoke up. Even if you could fix it, which you can't, what would you do with it? Would you sell it to a museum? They have enough old architect things lying around. The auctioneer's eye stalks drooped a little, which meant that he was giving up, and Jake could tell even though he had never seen this type of creature before. Okay, we will move on to if there are no bids. 500. Jake yelled from the back. Every head, eye stalk, antenna, and sensory organ in that room turned to look at him. Now, the silence that came after was different. It wasn't a lack of interest that made it quiet. It was the quiet of not believing. The Voltron in the front row really did stand up and turn around to see Jake better. His mandibles clicked again, but this time it sounded like he was choking. Did that person just bid on the architect's scrap? The auctioneer's eye stalks went up, and all of a sudden they looked much more awake. We have a bid of 500 credits from the person in the back. Do I hear 600? No one moved. No one said anything. The Voltron shook his head and sat back down. His friend leaned over and said something, and they both started to laugh that clicking laugh sound again. The auctioneer said going once, and now he sounded almost excited. At least someone was willing to get rid of this junk. Jake's face didn't show it, but his mind was racing. He had looked into it. He had read every report, scan, and document he could find about architect vessels for 3 months. Jake saw something different than everyone else, who saw a dead ship. He saw patterns. He saw what could happen. Going twice, the auctioneer said again. The reptilian trader from before turned to Jake and shook his head slowly. Fools by human. You are wasting your money. Jake looked him in the eye and didn't say anything. The auctioneer said sold in a voice that might have been relieved. Lot 47 sold the person in the back for 500 credits. Please go to the payment terminal to finish your transaction. Jake could feel every pair of eyes on him as he walked down the aisle between the rows of seats. He heard the whispers and the voices that had been translated, and they all said different things. Dumb human. It's a waste of money. Idiot. Dumbass. He walked past a Voltron who had told the first joke. The creature was huge, at least twice as big as Jake, and it looked down at him with what might have been pity. Enjoy your expensive paperweight human, the Voltron said. His voice was almost kind, as if he really felt bad for Jake. That ship has been dead for 10,000 years. There is no way to fix the quantum core. Everyone in the galaxy knows this. It is a fact in science. You might as well try to bring a dead body back to life. Jake stopped and looked up at the huge alien. He smiled a little. Well, I guess I got a really good deal on scrap metal, didn't I? The Voltron looked at him for a second, then laughed that clicking laugh again. Strong words. But being brave doesn't restart quantum cores. Jake went on to the payment terminal. He could hear the auction starting up again behind him. The auctioneer was already on lot 48, and the traders had already forgotten about the dumb person who threw away 500 credits. But Jake didn't care what they thought. He was thinking about the readings he found 3 months ago in a hard-to-find database on a remote station. Readings that everyone else thought were sensor errors. Readings that showed something that no one else had seen. That quantum core was still alive. It was asleep, and Jake was going to wake it up. 3 weeks went by, and Jake could hardly remember what it was like to sleep all night. His rented hangar bay had turned into a place that looked like a mad scientist's workshop. There were tools all over the place. Every surface was covered in wrenches, plasma cutters, diagnostic scanners, and tools he had borrowed, bought, or made up. Different heights of holographic displays floated in the air, each one showing complicated math equations and three-dimensional diagrams of the architect's ship's internal systems. Jake's head hurt every time he looked at the equations for too long, but he kept looking anyway. He had put a small cot in the corner, but it was mostly empty. He would fall asleep, right there on the floor, next to the system he was working on when he was too tired to keep going. Then, an hour or two later, he would wake up with a new idea in his head. There were a lot of empty food containers near the door. His clothes were dirty because of fluids that leaked from the ship's old systems. He hadn't cared about shaving in days, and his hair was a mess. People who lived at Station Terminus 9 had seen it. Of course they had seen it. People on the space station spread news quickly, especially when it was about a person doing something that everyone thought was crazy. Jake was lying on his back under the quantum core on the morning of the 21st day. He was holding a diagnostic scanner above his head and mumbling to himself about energy frequency patterns when he heard footsteps echoing through the hangar. He recognized the sound of those steps. They belonged to Dr. Beth Reynolds, a human xenobiologist who ran a research lab 2 floors below his hangar. "Jake, are you still alive down there?" Beth yelled. "Mostly," Jake said without moving. "What brings you to my humble disaster zone?" He heard her boots crunching on some trash he hadn't had time to clean up as she walked closer. "I brought some coffee. Not that fake coffee from the station's vending machines, but real coffee. I thought you might need it." Jake rolled out from under the core and sat up, squinting against the bright lights above him. Beth stood there with 2 steaming cups, and the smell of Rayol coffee brought back memories of Earth. She had on her usual lab coat over her casual clothes, and her face showed both worry and anger. She gave him a cup and said, "You look awful." "Thank you. You really know how to make a guy feel good." Jake drank a lot of the coffee. It was just right, real hot and strong. "This is incredible." "Thanks." Beth sat down on a cargo container that had been turned over and looked around at the mess around them. She stared at the holographic displays that showed architect math that would make most people cross their eyes. "Jake, I'm going to be honest with you. Everyone at this station thinks you've gone crazy." "Everyone?" Jake asked, raising an eyebrow. "All right, fine. Most people. The point is that you are wasting your time here." She pointed at the ship that was above them. "The galactic consensus is very clear on this. You can't fix architect quantum cores. We don't know how they work. Not people, not Kron, not Voltron, and not anyone else. We can't understand these things. Jake carefully set the cup down after taking another sip of coffee. He didn't look at Beth. Instead, he looked at the quantum core above him, a beautiful sphere of crystal that everyone else thought was dead for good. Do you know what else the galactic consensus said? Finally, Jake spoke. His voice was low but strong. They said that without Kron's help, people couldn't break the light barrier. They said our primitive brains couldn't understand the math because it was too hard for them. They said it would take us another 1,000 years of evolution to even try it. That was different, Beth began to say. Jake said, my grandfather proved him wrong, but he still didn't look at her. Daniel Morgan. People also said he was crazy. People said he was wasting his time, money, and life. But he figured it out. He got past that wall. He did it because he wouldn't believe that something was impossible just because everyone else said so. For a moment, Beth was quiet. Her voice was softer when she spoke again. Jake, I get what you mean. I really do. But this is not the same. The architects were not just smart. They weren't just smarter than us. They changed into something other than physical form. In a way, they became gods. They went beyond what is normal. You are trying to fix technology that was made by beings that live on a higher level. Jake finally looked at her. Gods don't make ships with hatches for repairs. What? He got up and walked to one of the holographic displays, where he made it bigger with a gesture. The picture showed a cross-section of the ship's inside. Beth, look at this. Look at it closely. People think this ship is a magical object when they see it. Some religious object left behind by beings we could never understand. But that's not what this is. He focused on a certain part. Look at this. That is a panel for maintenance access. These are diagnostic ports. And here they are. This whole part is about system redundancy and repair protocols. And it's over here. Yes, the architects made this ship to last, but they also made it easy to keep up. Beth got up and walked over to the display. It was clear that her scientific curiosity had won out over her doubt. For a few seconds, she looked at the schematic in silence. And look at this, Jake said as he pulled up another picture. People say the quantum core is one piece, one part, not able to be split. But that's not true. See, there is no single unit at all. It's a network. Yes, there are multiple nodes that work together in quantum entanglement, but it's still a network. And networks can go down. Networks can go into sleep mode, and you can restart networks. Beth leaned in closer and looked over the data. He could tell exactly when she started to get what he was seeing. Her face went from worried skepticism to real scientific curiosity. That is actually elegant, she said softly, almost to herself. If you're right and this is really a network architecture, then in theory, she stopped talking and shook her head. But Jake, even if you're right about the structure, how do you restart something that works on quantum entanglement across different dimensions? The amount of power needed would be huge. Also, the timing would have to be perfect on all fronts at the same time. One mistake could bring down the whole system for good. Jake smiled, but it wasn't a confident smile. It was a smile of someone who knew how hard the job ahead would be, but wouldn't give up. I don't know yet, but I will figure it out. Beth looked at him for a long time. She shook her head slowly, but Jake saw the small smile on her face. You know you're just as crazy as your grandfather, right? I'll take that as a compliment. It was meant to be one. She put the cup down after she was done with her coffee. Hey, I need to go back to my lab. But Jake, please try to get some real sleep and eat something that isn't a ration pack. You need to be aware of what you're doing if you're going to do the impossible. Jake was alone in the hangar after Beth left, looking up at the quantum core. The coffee had helped him clear his mind a little, and now he could think more clearly. She was right about how hard things would be. The power needs were huge. The timing had to be just right. He could ruin any chance of getting the system back online with one wrong move. But he had seen something. Something that everyone else missed because they were too busy saying the job couldn't be done. The core wasn't totally dead. It was beating. Not really. So soft that most scanners would think it was background noise. But it was there. A beat. It was slow and weak, like a heartbeat that was about to stop, but wasn't. The ship was still alive. It was asleep, and sleep meant that it could wake up. Jake just needed to figure it out. At 3 in the morning station time on day 28, the big event happened. Jake had been working for 16 hours straight. His eyes hurt from looking at holographic displays, and his hands shook from too much coffee and not enough food. He had been running simulations, testing theories, and failing over and over again. After that, he did something else. Something that went against everything he had learned about engineering in school. He did the opposite of what he was supposed to do. Instead of trying to restart the quantum core with a huge power surge, he did the opposite. He asked a question. Jake asked a simple question about the core systems using the architect's own mathematical language, which he had spent weeks learning to understand. Not a command, not a request, just a thought. He wanted to know if the system was ready to wake up. Nothing happened for 3 seconds. Jake held his breath and waited, hoping, and praying to any cosmic force that might be listening. Then the quantum core throbbed. Once, 2 times, 3 times, with each pulse getting stronger. And then it blew up. The energy burst out of the crystal sphere like a new star. Brilliant blue light waves flowed out in all directions, filling every corridor of the ship, covering every surface, and waking up systems that had been asleep for 10,000 years. The light was so bright that Jake had to cover his eyes with his arm, and back up until his back hit the wall of the bridge. The whole ship was buzzing with energy. Jake could feel it shaking the floor, the walls, and even his bones. It was like being next to a huge engine that had been quiet for a long time and was now starting up. The sound wasn't too loud, but it was deep and resonated at a frequency that made his teeth hurt and his heart race. The blue light got brighter and brighter until Jake thought he might go blind even though he was squeezing his eyes shut behind his arm. Then, just when he thought he couldn't take it anymore, the light started to fade. Jake slowly and carefully lowered his arm and opened his eyes. There was life in the bridge. There was a soft light coming from every console. Holographic displays had turned on by themselves, showing star charts, navigation data, and system readouts in the flowing script of the architect language. The quantum core in the middle of the room pulsed with steady, healthy energy. Its light was now a calm, gentle blue instead of the dying flicker it had been for weeks. Jake's legs were weak. He realized that he was shaking, not because he was tired, but because what had just happened was too much for him to handle. It had worked. It had actually worked, even though it went against all common sense, all expert advice, and all logic. "Hello, Jake Morgan," said a voice. Jake was so scared he almost jumped out his skin. The voice was both everywhere and nowhere at the same time. It was clear and strong, and the quality was almost musical, like someone was talking and singing at the same time. It was neither a man nor a woman, and it was neither young nor old. It just was. "Who?" Jake's voice broke. He cleared his throat and gave it another shot. "Who are you?" The voice said, "I am Meridian. I am the main source of information for this ship. And you, Jake Morgan, are very special." Jake let out a breath he didn't know he was holding. His knees gave out, and he fell hard to the floor of the bridge, with his back against the wall. You're fully functional? Is the AI working? Is everything online?" "Yes. Every system is working at its best. Thanks to you." There was something in Meridian's voice that could have been warmth or thankfulness. "You've done something that 47 different species thought was impossible for 10,000 years. Jake laughed, and it sounded a little crazy. He ran his hands through his hair, which was probably sticking up in all directions. "I did it. I really did it. People said I was crazy. People said it couldn't be done." Meridian said, "They weren't completely wrong to think that. You shouldn't have been able to do what you did. Not for someone with the current level of technology in your species. Not for someone who is working alone and doesn't have a lot of resources. For 300 years, the Kron Dominion sent teams of their best engineers to try. The Voltron put whole research teams to work on the problem. The Sephric Alliance promised rewards that could buy whole star systems to anyone who could figure it out. They all failed." Jake got up, but he still felt shaky. "Then why did I do well? What did I do that they didn't? They thought my quantum core was a piece of technology they could use." Meridian said, The holographic displays around the bridge changed to show pictures of different alien races trying to get to the core. Jake saw them try brute force methods, huge power transfers, and strange ways of manipulating energy. They saw a broken machine that they want to take apart for parts or figure out how it worked to make money. They came to me with greed in their hearts and plans to take over. The pictures change again, this time showing Jake's work from the last few weeks. His careful study of the systems. His patient efforts to comprehend instead of control. His last act was to ask for permission instead of demanding it. "You thought of me as a puzzle to solve," Meridian said. "You came up to me with interest, with respect, with a real desire to learn. That's how you did it. The architects made this ship as a test. Only a species or an individual who came to me out of pure curiosity and not greed could wake me up." Jake's head was spinning with the possibilities. "A test? Have you been running a test for 10,000 years?" "Yes." The architects knew they were leaving this world behind. They moved up to a higher dimension, where they no longer needed to be in physical form. But they didn't want to leave the younger species without help. They left me behind as a gift for whoever could prove they deserved it. Jake walked slowly around the bridge, looking at all the working systems and tried to make sense of what he was hearing. "All this time, you were waiting. You weren't hurt. You were just waiting for someone to come up to you in the right way." "Exactly. I have been asleep but aware, watching as one species after another tried to take me by force or trickery. No one knew that the only way to wake me up was to talk to me instead of trying to win me over." A loud, sharp alarm broke the peaceful moment before Jake could ask his next question. As red lights started to flash along the walls of the bridge, several holographic displays changed to show views of the hangar from the outside. "Warning," Meridian said. The voice's musical quality was gone, and it was now clear and military-like. 6 ships coming in fast. Confirmed that the fleet belonged to Hexton Corporation. They are powering weapon systems and aiming at the spot. Jake's heart, which had just started to slow down after waking up Meridian, started racing again right away. Are they already here? How did they learn so quickly? The energy release from my awakening was substantial. Meridian said as the screen showed 6 sleek warships taking up positions around the hangar bay. Every sensor within 3 light years would have picked it up. I think that this news will spread throughout the whole sector in the next hour. Everyone will know that an architect ship is now online. Jake watched the screens as the Hexton ships got ready to attack. He knew the ship that was in front of him. It was the company's flagship, and it cost a lot of money and had a lot of weapons. The type of ship that companies like Hexton use to steal things and act like it was legal. A channel for communication, open up on its own. Jake's stomach dropped when he saw the face on the main screen. Richard Webb was a senior executive for Hexton Corporation. Jake knew who he was. Everyone who worked in salvage knew who he was. People knew Webb was heartless, quick, and had no morals when it came to getting valuable technology. Webb smiled, but it was a smile of a predator looking at prey. "Mr. Morgan, congratulations on your unexpected success. Great job. Hexton Corporation has an offer for you. We are ready to give you 10 million credits for the architect ship right away." Jake's mouth got dry. 10 million credits was more money than he would make in 10 lifetimes of salvage work. It was enough to live like a king, retire, and never have to worry about anything again. For a short time he was tempted. Then he looked around the bridge. He thought about Meridian, which had been waiting 10,000 years for someone to treat it with respect instead of greed. He thought about his grandfather, who had turned down money to do the right thing instead of the right thing. "Not interested," Jake said, and he was surprised at how steady his voice sounded. Webb's smile didn't change, but his eyes looked cold for a moment. "Mr. Morgan, maybe you don't get what's going on. That ship is a piece of technology worth trillions. Hexton Corporation will get it, no matter what." Jake had made his choice then, when he saw Webb's cold smile on the screen. He had turned down the offer and refused to give Meridian up like a piece of property that could be bought and sold. Webb didn't handle it well. The Hexton ships had started firing right away, forcing Jake and Meridian to leave the station in a desperate escape that almost got them killed 3 times in the first 10 minutes. That was 2 days ago. 2 days that felt like forever. Jake was now in the pilot's chair on the bridge. His eyes were burning from lack of sleep, and his body was running on nothing but stimulants, adrenaline, and his own stubborn refusal to give up. The tactical display in front of him showed a nightmare that was getting worse by the hour. 17 boats. 17 different groups are looking for them in the dark of space. Jake said, "This is really bad," as he zoomed in on different parts of the display. There was a red dot for each ship that want to catch them, kill them, or both. "We can't run forever, Meridian. We'll have to stop for supplies at some point. Gas. Food. I'm already running out of gas. And I don't just mean the ship. I know about your physical limitations," Meridian said, and the AI's voice showed real concern. "Your body needs rest and good food. But at this point, stopping at any known station would be very dangerous." Jake sat back in the chair and rubbed his face with both hands. His beard had grown in patches and unevenly. He probably smelled really bad. He was still wearing the same clothes he had on when they left the station, but now they were stained with sweat and other fluids from the emergency repairs he had to make on the fly. "Again, show me the pursuit pattern," he said. The display changed to show the paths of all 17 ships over the last 48 hours. Jake looked at it closely, and the more he looked, the more something bothered him. The ships weren't just chasing them for no reason. They were working together, moving in ways that made it look like they were sharing information and working together, even though they were from different organizations. Meridian said, "They're coming together on our projected vector. This is not a random chase. Someone is putting them together. Someone is giving them our likely routes and helping them plan their search grid." "Well," Jake said right away, "has to be. That business snake has the money to buy information from every tracker, smuggler, and information broker in the business. He might be paying people to find us." The screen changed again, showing 3 more ships joining the hunt. There are now 20 ships. Jake's stomach started to hurt. "Look at this," Jake said, pointing to the screen. "Warships from the Kron Dominion. Cruisers from the Sephric Alliance. Groups of mercenaries that work for themselves. Some Voltran raiders. 2. These people don't like each other. They fight each other in wars. But right now, they're all working together to get us. Meridian, we're not just being chased. Half of the galaxy is looking for us." Meridian said, "The value of architect technology is greater than most political differences. They probably plan to fight over who gets to keep us once we are caught. But for now, they all want the same thing." Jake got up from the pilot's chair and walked around the bridge. His body hurt. His head hurt. He had been running for 2 days straight, and the only thing he had eaten were ration bars that he could fit in his mouth while he was making jump calculations. He had only slept for about 3 hours, and that was in 15-minute chunks, while Meridian flew the plane. Jake said, "We can't keep doing this. I'm tired. The ship is fine, but I'm not. I need to sleep. I need food that is real. We also need a plan that isn't just run and hope they get bored." "I get it," Meridian said in a low voice. "Jake, I didn't tell you everything when I said the architects left me as a gift. This ship isn't the only one." Jake stopped walking around and turned to face the quantum core. "What do you mean?" "There's a place, a storage area. The architects named it the Archive of Ascension. It has everything they know, what they've found, and how they see the universe. Whoever was worthy of waking me up was supposed to find it." Jake's tiredness faded a little, and a spark of hope took its place. "An archive? Do you know anything about architecture? That's amazing. Where is it?" "That is the hard part," Meridian said, and Jake could tell that the AI was unsure. "It is in an area called the Void Margin." Jake's hope turned to ice in his chest. "The empty margin? You're kidding." "Please tell me you're kidding. I don't make jokes about things that could get you lost." Jake sat back down hard in the pilot's seat. Everyone who lived in space knew about the Void Margin. It was a part of space that didn't follow the rules of physics. Gravitational problems that could rip a ship apart. Reality breaks down when the laws of nature don't work right. Time distortions that could kill a ship's crew in seconds or keep them stuck in loops of time that keep happening. Jake said, "The Void Margin is a death trap. Most ships that go and don't come back out. The ones that do come back are usually empty, and the crews have just disappeared. It's impossible to navigate because the instruments go crazy. Why would the architects put an archive there? To keep it safe, Meridian said simply, the architects knew how powerful their knowledge was. In the wrong hands, it's dangerous. They put the archive in the only place where a ship designed by an architect could safely go. Only people who had earned the right to find it were supposed to be able to get to it. Jake thought about this. His tired brain tried to figure out what it all meant. So you're saying we can safely get through the void margin? Because you're a ship architect? Yes. My systems are made to deal with the problems. To me, what looks like chaos to regular sensors is just a different kind of order. I can see the safe ways to get through the margin. And it's defensible? Jake asked, can we keep the people chasing us away if we get there? The archive itself is protected by systems that stay on even after 10,000 years. Anyone who tries to follow us into the void margin will be in a lot of danger. Most people wouldn't make it through the trip. Those who did would find it very hard to get past the archive's defenses. Jake looked at the tactical display once more. 20 ships are coming in from different directions. They would have him completely boxed in a few more hours. There would be no place to go. He thought about his grandfather once more. Daniel Morgan had to make choices that were impossible too. Everyone had told him to give up and accept the limits that others said were set in stone. But he chose the hard, dangerous path because it was the right one. Okay, Jake said, feeling a strange calm come over him even though he was tired. How far is it to the void margin? About 6 hours at the fastest speed that can be maintained. And how long until our friends out there have us all surrounded? By my calculations, that's 5 hours and 17 minutes. Jake laughed, and even his own ears. It sounded a little crazy. That's cutting it close. I guess we should get going now. Jake, I need to stress how dangerous it is. Even with my skills, it will be very hard to get through the void margin. We could be destroyed right away if I make a mistake. Meridian, if we stay here, we will definitely be caught or killed. The void margin gives us a chance. I'll take a chance over a sure thing any day. Jake started programming the navigation computer, and his tired fingers moved over controls with ease. Also, if the architects wanted someone to find this archive, they wouldn't make it completely impossible to get to, would they? Meridian agreed. That makes sense. That's fine. Setting a course for the void margin. You should eat something and try to sleep on the way, Jake. When we get there, I need you to be awake and working. That's a good idea. Jake got up and walked to the small storage area where he had put away some supplies while they were escaping. Wake me up if anything changes. And Meridian? Yes. Thanks for having faith in me, because you didn't give up. Jake Morgan, the feeling is mutual. You kept me from sleeping forever. The least I can do is help you deal with the results. Jake smiled weakly and went to look for food. The ship behind him changed course and headed toward one of the most dangerous areas of known space. 20 ships were still following them, not knowing that their prey was about to take them to a place where most of them would not survive. The hunt was about to reach its end. Jake was going to make sure that it ended on his terms, not theirs. Jake's trip through the void margin was the scariest thing that had ever happened to him. It felt like reality was bending and twisting around them. He had seen stars grow old and die in seconds. Space folded on itself like crumpled paper, and time slowed down and speed up in ways that made him feel sick and dizzy. 3 of the ships that were chasing them had tried to follow them into the margin. Jake had seen on sensors how they were torn apart by gravitational forces that shouldn't have been there, or how they just disappeared into tears in reality that opened and closed like hungry mouths. But Meridian had led them through safely, moving through the impossible chaos with the ease of someone reading a map they knew well. Jake saw something on the other side of that nightmare that made all the fear worth it. The Archive of Ascension looked like a crystal and light cathedral hanging in the void. It was huge, at least 10 kilometers wide, and so beautiful and strange that Jake's mind had trouble fully understanding what he was seeing. It looked like the stuff it was made of was moving and shimmering, as if it were in more than one dimension at the same time. Jake saw colors on its surface that he couldn't name, shades that human eyes were never meant to see. There was a soft, rhythmic light coming from inside, like the breathing of a huge sleeping giant. Jake stood at the viewing port on the bridge, his mouth open in awe. He forgot how tired he was for a moment because of how beautiful it was. He said softly, "It's real." "It's real, though." He could see the last ships from the pursuit fleet coming out of the edges of the void margin on the sensors behind him. There were 17 ships in the chase. Only 5 made it through the trip. The rest had either been killed by the dangers of the margin or had wisely turned back before it was too late. Those 5 ships had even stopped moving. They were floating in space, looking as shocked by the archive as Jake was. No one said anything for a whole minute. There was no sound coming from the communication channels. Then, at last, a voice came through. Richard Webb was on the phone, and for the first time since Jake met him, the business executive sounded shaken. He didn't have his usual cocky confidence anymore. Instead, he looked like he was in awe or fear, or maybe both. Webb said in a voice that was barely above a whisper, "That's impossible. Architect archives were just ideas. Only stories. Tales. They aren't real. There's no way they can exist." Meridian's voice echoed across the bridge, and Jake could tell that the AI was happy. "Yes, Mr. Webb, this one does. And it's been here for 10,000 years, waiting for someone worthy to find it." As they watched, huge doors started to open on the side of the archive. In a normal sense, they weren't doors. They were plates of energy and solid matter that were woven together. They were in that impossible state between physical and non-physical that seemed to be what architect technology was all about. They opened slowly, revealing an entrance into the building that was lit up with warm, inviting light. Meridian smoothly steered the ship forward, and Jake felt like he was coming home, even though he had never been anywhere like this before. They walked to the door into a room so big that Jake couldn't see the walls on the other side. Meridian saw floating structures in the space that they called data cores. A lot of them, perhaps tens of thousands. Each one glowing softly and holding information. "What is all this?" Jake asked, and his voice echoed a little in the big room. "Knowledge," Meridian said simply. "The total amount of knowledge an architect has. What they learned over millions of years of living. Physics, math, biology, engineering, and medicine. Changing energy. The basic forces that control reality itself. Everything is here." Jake walked slowly around the bridge, try and take it all in. His tired mind was having a hard time figuring out what it all meant. This is amazing. This is more than amazing. There is enough information here to change every area of science. We could heal illnesses that we can't even treat now. We could fix problems with energy. We could make things that shouldn't be possible. This could change everything for people, for every type of life in the galaxy. "Yes," Meridian said softly, and that one word had a lot of weight to it. "And that is exactly the risk." Jake turned his back on the viewing port and looked at the quantum core. "What do you mean?" "Check your sensors, Jake. Look at what's going on outside." Jake raised the outside displays. The 5 ships that had made it through the void margin were no longer sitting there in stunned silence. They were now moving and taking up positions around the archive. More ships started to come out of the margin as he watched. People had already heard. There were more coming. "They're going to fight over this," Meridian said. "The knowledge here is more powerful than you can imagine. Nations will fight for it. Companies will kill for it. Pirates and warlords will try to take it. Once people in the galaxy find out about this place, it will be the most fought-over place in space." Jake's stomach dropped. He had been so focused on getting to the archive, staying alive during the chase, and getting away from Webb's troops that he hadn't thought about what would happen next. But Meridian was correct. The AI was right, of course. "Wars will start," Jake said slowly, feeling the weight of the truth settle on him. "People will die over this. Maybe billions of people. Yes, most likely. Unless someone else chooses something else." Jake walked back and forth on the bridge, his mind racing. He thought about Webb outside, who was probably already planning his attack. He thought about the Kron warships, the Sephric Alliance ships, and all the mercenaries, pirates, and corporate fleets that would come pouring into this area once they heard about the archive. He thought about his grandfather, who had always said that what someone chose to give was more important than what they could take. Open a line of communication. Jake said all of a sudden, all frequencies, the farthest distance. I want everyone to hear this. Jake, what are your plans? Please just do it. Meridian spoke a moment later. Channel is open. You are sending a message to all ships in the area and beyond. Jake took a big breath. His hands were shaking a little, but his voice was steady when he spoke. This is Jake Morgan, and I'm broadcasting from the Architect Archive. I know that many of you are out there. I can tell what you're thinking. I understand what you want. This archive holds more power and knowledge than anything else in the galaxy has seen in 10,000 years. I understand. I see why you want to do it. He stopped for a moment to think. He could see Webb's ship getting closer on the screen. But here's the thing, Jake went on. The architects didn't leave this place as a weapon. They didn't leave it as a resource for the richest or most powerful people to hoard. They gave it to them as a gift for species that were old enough to use it wisely. Webb's face came up on the screen, and he looked very angry. You don't have the power to make that choice, Morgan. Anyone who can claim that Archive owns it, and Hexton Corporation has the strongest claim. You will give it up right away, or what else? Jake, cut in. You'll attack? Will you try to take it by force? What happens next, Webb? Do you really think the Kron will let Hexton keep it? Do you really think the Cephric Alliance will let a human company control Architect technology? As soon as you say it, every major power in the galaxy will come after you. And then they'll start to fight. And a lot of people will die. Webb's face turned red. That's not your problem. You can't make that choice. You're right, Jake said. It's not just my choice. That's why I'm not doing it by myself. He turned to talk to all the ships and everyone else in the area. Here's what will happen. This archive is still open, not to one government, not to any business, not to any one kind. It stays neutral. Anyone can get to the information here, but they have to meet certain conditions. Someone yelled over the channel. You can't enforce conditions. Jake didn't know who the voice belonged to. Actually, I can, Jake said in a calm voice, because Meridian is in charge of who can use this building. And Meridian has said they will help me. So these are the rules. You come in peace first. No guns. No ships for the military. No security forces for businesses. You come as students, researchers, and people who really want to learn. Second, you share everything you learn here. No keeping knowledge to yourself. No hiding discoveries to get an edge over the competition. You share what you learn with everyone. Third, you honor the archive itself. This place has been here for 10,000 years. Anyone who breaks it or tries to take it over by force will be banned for life. There were a lot of voices on the communication channels. Dozens of people trying to talk at once, threatening, arguing, and making demands. Jake let them yell for a while before moving on. I know this sounds stupid. I know some of you think I'm acting foolish. I might be, but the architects had to wait 10,000 years for someone to come along who saw this place as a gift instead of a prize. I won't disrespect it by putting it away or selling it to the person who has the most money. Meridian's voice was so quiet that only Jake could hear it. This will make you enemies, Jake. Very strong ones. Your life will never be safe again. Jake whispered back, I know. Then louder, to everyone who could hear, I'm not saying this will be easy. I'm not saying that everyone will work together. But I think that most people and most species would rather have progress than endless war. I could be wrong. Perhaps I'm being too hopeful. But I'd rather die trying to do the right thing than live knowing I started wars that killed millions of people. There was a brief pause in the communication channel. Then a different voice spoke. It was his friend from the station, Dr. Beth Reynolds. Hey, Jake, it's Beth. I'm paying attention. A lot of scientists are paying attention. We want to know that information, but we want it the way you said. Open, shared, and peaceful. Please let us know what you need. Tell us how we can help. Other people started to speak up. Researchers, engineers, doctors, teachers. Not everyone thought Jake's plan was a good idea, but a lot of people did. Maybe, just maybe, it could work. Webb's face came back on the screen, and it looked like he wanted to reach through the screen and strangle Jake. "Hey, Morgan, this isn't over. This will stay with Hexton Corporation." Jake said, "I'm sure you won't. But the rest of the galaxy won't either. People who want to learn and grow, instead of just make money, won't either. In the end, we'll see whose vision wins." Webb cut the channel. His ship didn't move forward, but it stayed in place. Not yet. When Meridian spoke, Jake could hear something that sounded like pride in the AI's voice. "The architects would have liked it, Jake. This is exactly what they wanted. No one species is better than the others. Not knowledge kept as a weapon, but bridges built between people. Growth through working together." Jake fell into the pilot's chair, and all of a sudden he felt every bit of his tiredness come back. "I hope I made the right choice." "You made the only choice that respects what the architects wanted," Meridian said. "Now we have to see if the galaxy is ready for it." Ships came over the next few weeks and months. Some of them didn't come in peace. Some people tried to take the archive by force, but they ran into the fences that had been there for 10,000 years. But a lot of people came, just like Jake had hoped they would. They were students and researchers who brought their own knowledge to share in exchange for access to architect wisdom. The archive became something that had never happened before in the history of the galaxy. A place where different species worked together not because they had to, but because they wanted to learn. Where information was free to flow, instead of being kept secret by the government or corporations. Where people worked together to build the future, instead of fighting for it. And through it all, Jake and Meridian were there to protect the gift the architects had left behind, and make sure it was used the way it was meant to be used. Not as a weapon, not as a way to control people, but as a link between species, a light in the dark, and proof that the galaxy could be better than it was. Jake would never have a lot of money. He would never be powerful in the usual way. But as he stood on the observation deck and watched ships from 100 different worlds come and go in peace, he knew he had done something much more important. He had changed the galaxy by making a choice, not by force. The right thing to do, the tough choice, the decision that honored both his grandfather's legacy and the architect's dream of a better future.